Hello world! Today we're going to be doing a Toyota Corolla Alternator. This specific model is a 2008. Now after you've removed the cover and disconnected the battery, you're going to go ahead and remove this cover for the positive cable that goes to the alternator. That guy was a little bit stubborn. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the nut that's holding it. You can use a 10mm socket, or you can use a wrench, although socket might be a better idea at this point. You're also going to want to disconnect the lower portion of the connector, or the harness, which is the connector. And then this little piece of plastic over here, which just makes it so the harness doesn't move. It's just a little piece of plastic that hooks on there, and it's also held on by a 10mm. Well, this one is held on by a 10mm bolt. Again, you can use a socket or a wrench, whichever fits, whichever tickles your needs. Now we're going to go ahead and loosen up the bottom bolt. This bottom bolt should be a 14mm. I'm trying to adjust this angle so you can see a little bit better. Now, I find that the socket works more optimum if all you have is a wrench. It is doable, but the spacing is a little bit tighter. But, you know, like I said, both work. So 14mm socket or 14mm wrench. Then we're going to go ahead and loosen the main tensioner bolt, which is this top guy up here. Now you want to use a 12mm. Then we're going to go ahead and loosen up the bracket, which is also a 12mm bolt. You can use a wrench if you have a socket small enough that fits in there. I think there's enough space, but you know, if you have a ratchet wrench, then that also works as well. And then you're going to go ahead and remove the main bolt that goes to the alternator. This guy ties it down at the very top. We're going to go ahead and get that out of the way. Now, here, a wrench does fit, but definitely we're using a socket right now. Now I'm going to go ahead and bring in this guy, since this guy will make life a little bit easier. That way I don't have to do it all by hand. But now that's out of the way. Take that bolt out. Now you want to save these two. Granted, you shouldn't be able to lose, I would say lose it or mix them up there. But you never know. You just never know. Now I went ahead and pushed the alternator a little bit so I can remove the serpentine belt out of the way. But I do want to loosen the lower bolt a little bit more. So if you do this in the beginning, you can, and granted it makes things a little bit easier. Typically I just loosen bolts in the beginning, then I go back and take them. I don't know why, it's just a personal habit of mine. If you want to take off the bolt as soon as you loosen it, you can. Sometimes it is a good idea, other times it actually, you know, makes things a little bit more difficult. So, as 100 years pass and this long bolt comes out, if it ever comes out, which it will, maybe in another 100 years. Alright, there, it's out. So this is the long one. On this particular model, there's no nut. The part where it threads onto, it's integrated into the alternator. Now I went ahead and removed the serpentine belt out of the way. If you don't want to have it fall off from another pulley, it might be good to get a bungee and hold it, but you don't, it's not necessary. Now this upper bracket, it felt as though we had enough space to, you know, wiggle the alternator out. But, you know, it's less hassle if we just move it out of the way in its entirety. So I'll go ahead and remove that bolt holding that one bracket. Wiggle the alternator out. And it just comes straight out. Easy, easy, and out. Now for, how do I explain? You want to rotate it a little bit, you know, just so it comes out easier, because that pulley, you know, as you saw, got in the way with the compressor line. Now if you remember this guy correctly, I said 10mm nut. I went ahead and fast forwarded the install. You saw that I put that 10mm nut to hold that small little bracket. We're going to go ahead and put in the large 14mm bolt. So you want to go ahead and run it all the way across so it starts threading onto the alternator itself. You can, as long as it's on, you can throw it on there. You don't have to tighten it down all the way yet. I'm going to go ahead and put the upper bracket, you know, same way as we removed it. Put the back one, then we put the one that holds the alternator and is going to create our tension. So I'm going to go ahead and once this line moves out of my way, go ahead and put that bolt in. Now I am not putting this all the way, just enough to where I still have, you know, some leeway to push the alternator back and forth. And so when I go ahead and tighten up the main bolt, it follows. So as you can see, we're going to go ahead and tighten this guy, and you see it follows. Here's the tricky part for some. You want to make sure you have enough tension on that belt, or else you will have some noise. So just note that if you go ahead and do this, you can tighten it to your liking. If there is some noise, then know that it's probably not tight enough. Now I want to go ahead and tighten up that lower bolt. We put tension on the belt. Now I want to go ahead and fasten these bolts down. So I've fastened the lower one, now I did the top one. Now we're going to connect the main charging harness. Again, that's a 10mm. You don't want to do this with any power tools when you're tightening it, or you can't overdo it. Put that plastic cover on, connect the lower connector, button up the bottom where the harness is held. See that little bit of plastic? It goes in there and you're done.